Today we are starting a new reading, which should be relatively short. Because the book is quite short, which is the second part of this book, we have already read the first part, which is about the wisdom of aging. Today we will begin the second part, which is that special section about friendship, which is the second part of this book. Today we will do an introduction going up to Theme 5, Chapter 5, where he will present the book, what he intends, and will begin to give the floor to his protagonist. He will talk about his character. In his adolescence and youth, Cicero, the author of this book, had a teacher. He studied at the school of a man who was an augur, which was Quintus Mutius Scaevola. And while studying at the school of this Quintus Mutius Scaevola, he often listened to the stories he told about his late father-in-law. According to him, this late father-in-law, who was Gaius Laelius, was even wiser than he was. He was said to be a very wise man. So, he and the other son-in-law of Gaius Laelius would gather to listen to the speeches he gave. And they say that his speeches were of great wisdom. And then Cicero will place as the protagonist of this book, as if he were handing it over to this person to lead the book, this Gaius Laelius, whom he never met personally, but who is said to have been a man of great wisdom. So, they gather at the house of Gaius Laelius. Quintus Mutius Scaevola and his other son-in-law, whose name will soon be mentioned. Gaius Fabius. So, Quintus Mutius Scaevola and Gaius Fabius. They were two sons-in-law of Gaius Laelius. So, this Gaius Laelius we mentioned, he is going to tell a story about his greatest friend, a man named Scipio Africanus. This man, Scipio Africanus, who seems to have been the second to use this name, had an adoptive father before him who also used this name. This Scipio Africanus was said to be a man of exceptional life, an impeccable man, and had been a great friend of Gaius Laelius. So, it was said that the friendship between Scipio and Laelius was something that would endure for posterity. So great was it, and so much did they help each other grow. So much so that the wisdom of one encouraged the wisdom of the other. And at that time, this Scipio Africanus had passed away. And so the two apprentices, Scaevola and Gaius Fabius, who were the two sons-in-law, went to talk to Gaius Laelius about the loss of his great friend, asking how he was coping, how he was feeling. And then Gaius Laelius begins to explain that he was sober, that he was well, because if he were to feel bad, it would only be out of envy, since Scipio Africanus had had a wonderful fate, which is the destiny that crowns people who have a life like the one he had. He will say that there were doctrines at that time claiming that everything ends with death, but he did not believe in those doctrines. But even if they were true, the life of Scipio Africanus was impeccable and left a great legacy for those who lived, for those who shared life with him. And then it will describe, throughout much of the beginning of the book, the wisdom of Scipio Africanus. Understand, two friends, Gaius Laelius and Scipio Africanus. Scipio recently passed away, and Gaius Laelius says he bears it with great dignity, with a lot of grace, the loss of his friend, despite the longing, because he knows the great destiny his friend must have had, as he truly deserved it. And then he starts talking about the virtues of Scipio Africanus. And it will showcase the great achievements he made in his lifetime. Who conquered two cities that were enemies of Rome? Who was extremely kind to his family, to all those in need, how just he was, how generous he was. In short, he will describe the great qualities of his deceased friend. He was truly a person worthy of being called a sage, even more so than himself. Gaius Laelius humbly puts himself in a lower position in wisdom compared to his deceased friend. And then he sets out to talk about what this friendship was. Based on the friendship between him and Scipio Africanus, he will define the importance of friendship in someone's life. He even goes on to constantly mention that of the 7 sages of Greece, none were as significant as this, except for one who lived in Greece, and that it had been confirmed by the oracle of Apollo as the wisest of all men. This reference he makes to the wisest. He is talking about Socrates. He speaks of Socrates, who would have been the Greek sage. Don't forget, Cicero was in Rome. Understand well the Greek sage Socrates. The oracle of Apollo would have said that he was the wisest man who ever lived. And Gaius Lelius will compare his friend Scipio Africanus to Socrates several times, saying that he might have been even wiser than that Greek sage. In other words, this shows the magnitude of greatness he saw in his deceased friend. He might have been greater than the wisest of the Greeks, confirmed by the oracle of Apollo, who would be Socrates. After making this description, which is lengthy and here at the beginning in all the first chapters, he will, later on, much further ahead, he is going to talk about friendship. His 2 sons-in-law, who are Gaius Fabius and Quintus Mutius Scaevola, will ask him, "Tell us then, since you experienced such a great friendship with Scipio Africanus, tell us about friendship." He enters here in chapter 5 when he says that he would agree, as his 2 sons-in-law, both Fabius and Scaevola, had asked him to speak about friendship. He says he would consent to talk about friendship if he were as wise as the Greeks, but that he will try to do the best he can, not being so wise as to speak on any subject off the cuff, like the Greeks were. And then he continues by saying the following, "Therefore, to explore what can be said about friendship, I think you should question those who make a profession of faith in these kinds of exercises." In other words, the philosophers who lived at the time, it seems that some of them were already becoming quite theoretical. He says, you should ask those who make a profession of faith in this kind of exercise of speaking on any subject. For my part, all I can do is urge you to prefer friendship over all the goods of this earth. Indeed, nothing harmonizes better with nature. Nothing better exposes the positive or negative moments of existence. What is he going to say? That the ideal would be the theorists of philosophy, who seem to already exist at that time. And he was a very practical man, but if they asked him to talk about friendship, he would say there's nothing better in life. In good times, friendship is wonderful, and in tough times it is the best comfort you can have. So, at any moment in life, friendship is the greatest gift one can have, it is the greatest good one can possess. And then he sets out to speak. Here, in paragraph 18 of chapter 5, he talks a little about friendship. First and foremost, friendship, I am convinced, can only exist among good people. Later on he says, but see, they define as wisdom, so no mortal has been able to follow it so far. Well, ours, we need to take into account what makes up the customs and everyday life, not what makes up the substance of dreams and aspirations. What is he to say? Well, friendship only exists among good men, that is, among the wise. But if you ask the intellectuals of the time what a wise person was, they would describe something so out of the ordinary, so abstract, so unreal, that you wouldn't find any wise person at any point in history. And for him, that's not very practical. He would have to consider wise a man who gave good answers to life. As we say in the Christian tradition, by their works you shall know them. A man who gave excellent answers to life. A man who has played all his roles well and fulfilled what life has asked of him throughout his life. This is a man who can be called wise. So he will say, I will not, along with the theorists, claim that the wise person is unattainable. I will define the wise person as someone who has responded well to life, whose actions were worthy. And between them, only between the wise, can there be true friendship. He will continue talking about this further. And he will then say that for him, the wise are those he considers to be good men. And yet, the theorists would not agree with this, because every theorist, every intellectual who is very theoretical and not connected to practice, they will always want to create concepts that are too abstract and don't exist in practice. So, he defines the wise person as a good man. He defines a good man, as he will bring to light further, as a person who gives good answers to life. That's what he will discuss in paragraph 19. All the people who, in their conduct, in their lives, have shown undeniable proof of loyalty, integrity, fairness, and generosity, and who don't carry greed, passions, or inconsistency within them, and who truly possess a great strength of spirit, just like the men I mentioned a little while ago. I believe all of them can be counted among the good people. In other words, who will he consider as wise, as good people? I reiterate, those who had loyalty, integrity, fairness, and generosity, and who do not harbor greed, passions, or inconsistency, and are endowed with great strength of spirit. These are the good people, and friendship occurs among good people. This characterizes them as they follow, as much as a human being is capable, nature, which is the best guide for living correctly. In other words, these people, the good men, use nature as their guide. Do you remember that it's something very common here in Stoic Rome? The Stoics considered, although Cicero is not precisely regarded as a Stoic thinker, but Stoicism spoke of life in accordance with nature as the wisest of all lives. Well, continuing from here, in chapter 19, he will say, in parentheses, nature indeed has arranged a kind of friendship, but it is not one that withstands every test. In other words, because we are born into the same family, we tend to be friends, but it is not a friendship that withstands every test. Depending on what these relatives might do, suddenly there can be definitive breakups. Whereas, in a true friendship, there is no risk of these definitive breakups. Thus, friendship is worth more than kinship, because kinship can be emptied of all affection, and friendship does not. Remove affection, and there will no longer be a friendship worthy of that name. But kinship persists. If you take away affection, you remain related to people. Whereas if you take affection out of friendship, it ceases to exist. True friendship among good men is sustained by great affection, and it cannot be abandoned suddenly, as sometimes happens with the contact between relatives. What made them similar was only the material nature, not the nature of the soul. Therefore, this bond can be broken. Friendship. Among relatives, it can be broken. Friendship among good men never. The strength that friendship holds becomes entirely clear to the spirit. If we consider the following, amidst the infinite society of the human race that nature itself has arranged, a bond is contracted and sealed so intimately that affection is found solely condensed between two people or rarely more than two. In other words, generally speaking, a great friendship is a bond between two people, rarely among a group larger than two. So, he will start talking from chapter 6, which is our meeting next week, about this friendship. But, in any case, we can already reflect a little on why true friendship can only be built in relation. There are good men. Only good men have true friendship, because true friendship always helps the other to grow towards the good, and only a good man can help someone grow towards the good. If a person is not a good man, if they are inconsistent, passionate, the one who becomes very closely attached to them tends to be influenced by their flaws. No matter how much you overlook the flaws, no matter how much you acknowledge them, if you're not very careful and the intimacy is too great, you can be influenced by their flaws. Whereas, among good men, the only thing that will influence your friend is your goodness. Therefore, through your goodness, you make him become even better. And through his goodness, he makes you become even better. Therefore, for Cicero, friendship is something that forms around a pact, so that one makes the other better, so that one elevates the other, and still, so that one makes the other better. More noble. We might say, well, than the everyday friendship we have, we who are not wise, nor can we consider ourselves such good men, because we are very inconsistent and have many vices. Is this friendship worthless? Yes, worthwhile and very valuable, provided that it is established around that. What we have best, and not around our vices. Because people who come together around vices are accomplices, not friends. There is a complicity of vices. So, they come together to criticize, to speak ill of someone. They come together to indulge in their vices collectively, to gain more advantages together than they would separately. None of this is friendship. All of this is complicity. They come together to reinforce each other's flaws. This is not, nor has it ever been, friendship, so, even among ordinary people, true friendship is established around what they have best, in such a way that one encourages the best in the other. One encourages the highest, the most noble qualities in the other. So you know that if you're doing poorly, that friend, who is truly a friend, will tell you that very frankly. You're doing poorly. In this way, you will go through tough times. In this way, you will suffer. He won't flatter you. He won't just please you. He won't say things just so you'll like him. He will always say what you need to hear to grow. That's a true friend. Sometimes even we, when we are very attached to passions, to vices, want to distance ourselves from him because we don't want to hear the truth. And you know that if you approach him, he will tell you the truth because he wants nothing else. But your well-being, only your well-being. It's the one who is with you when you're doing well, is with you when you're down, because one of the greatest signs of true friendship is when you're in crisis. When you're down, the fake friends, they all run away, disappear, and leave you alone. The greatest sign of true friendship is when you're down, when you've made a mistake, when you're at rock bottom, and they're still with you. Even if he has warned you 1,000 times not to go in that direction. If you go and fall into a hole, he will be there with you to help you get out. He will be there with you in your moment of greatest triumph. Not to flatter you, but to show you what made you feel good. What were the virtues that got you there? And you have that same commitment to him to see what he is doing well. Encourage what he does well and warn him when he's heading for a pitfall. Even if he doesn't like it, even if he threatens to abandon your friendship. If you are a true friend, you always guide towards good, even if we are not exactly virtuous people. Because that demands a lot from a human being. But even though we are very unstable beings and full of flaws, we can have true friendships when they are established in relation to the good. True friendship is very demanding. I am with you, no matter what situation you're in. But I will always tell you the truth. I will point out your mistakes. I will show you when you're heading for a pitfall. And I will also show you the virtues that helped you rise, and the flaws that can make you fall. I am willing to do this in any situation. My heartfelt commitment to you lasts a lifetime. Even if you abandon me, if you don't want to know about me, if you, when you're down in the dumps, come back looking for me, you can count on me. If you have someone like that, that is a true friend. All the others are just acquaintances. Passengers, connections, fellow travelers, sometimes, as I mentioned, complicities of vices, those people gather to share a vice that they all have. and there it creates a situation of momentary joy, of fleeting pleasure, but not the deep pleasure that a true friendship is capable of providing. A true friendship will provide you with the best moments of your life. Those moments when you brushed closest to the sky. Does your friend provide you with that? And do you provide that for them? Those moments when he brushes closest to the sky. And those are true friends. It's a pact created around the idea of goodness. In other words, each one will bring out the best in the other. It is around the idea of goodness that friendship is established. And in this sense, it's the best thing we can have in life, according to Cicero. Nothing compares to a bond like this. It's a lifelong bond, and it's a bond that remains in any circumstance. Charitable, it's a bond that never leaves you alone.